Chief Robert Corbier. I'm from Wikwamacong unceded Indian Reservation.
My name is Stephen McGraw. I'm a First Nations member here on the reserve of Wikwamacong and Manitoulin Island. I've been an educator for about 25 years now.
Maxine Ferguson, I'm the principal of Lossielvin Pontiac School in Wikwamacong. I have been the principal here for 2 years now, and I have been working on the First Nation since 1982 in this First Nation. I started teaching in Attawakaskat for 2 years.
Reserve. Land set aside by the federal government for the use and benefit of a specific band or First Nation. The Indian Act provides that land cannot be owned by individual band or First Nation members.
Unceded means the people of Wikwamacong have never given up any parts of our lands, our territories, our cultures, our traditions, our customs, and today they're still maintained.
Aboriginal peoples. The descendants of the original inhabitants of North America. Section 35 of the Constitution Act, 1982 states, in this act, Aboriginal people of Canada includes the Indian, Inuit, and Métis peoples of Canada. These separate groups have a unique heritage, languages, cultural practices, and spiritual beliefs. Their common link is their indigenous ancestry.
Enjoy working with Aboriginal people, my people, also my cousins. I worked for 7 years in the high Arctic, working with the Inuit, who I consider my relatives, my cousins.
Inuit, Aboriginal people in northern Canada living mainly in Nunavut, the Northwest Territories. Northern Quebec and Labrador. Ontario has a very small Inuit population. The Inuit are not covered by the Indian Act. Indian Act, federal legislation that regulates Indians and reserves and sets out certain federal government powers and responsibilities towards First Nations and their reserved lands. The first Indian Act was passed in 1876. Although there were a number of pre- and post-Confederation enactments with respect to the Indians and reserve prior to 1876. Since then, the Act has undergone numerous amendments, revisions, and reenactments. The Department of Indian Affairs and Northern Development administers the Act. Aboriginal rights. Rights held by some Aboriginal peoples as a result of their ancestors' use and occupancy of traditional territories before contact with Europeans or before British sovereignty in Canada. Aboriginal rights vary from group to group depending on what customs, practices, and traditions were integral to the distinctive culture of that group.
People, it's almost like a circular. There's always a balance, it's a circular. And a lot of times now, when something is not working or if something needs to be fixed, it's almost like a hole or a gap in the circle.
Okay.
And you could feel it like in a car.
Yeah, like a tire. Yeah.
If something's broken. So that Aboriginal world view is slowly changing for Native people. That we can see where the gaps are or where the circle is broken. So we need to fill that in so it runs more smoothly. for this generation and the next generation and the next.
Okay.
Is there adequate funding for schools? There's no such thing as adequate funding for First Nation.
We don't get funded accordingly to what the provincial students would be funded. We don't get the same amount of money per student, and you know, we do the best we can, and we have some really high quality things, but it takes a while to plan when we get them.
Phil Fontaine, Grand Chief of the Assembly of First Nation, states there's a $2,000 funding gap between what governments spend per student in public schools versus what Aboriginal students receive.
And the difference, like right now here in Wikwemikong, in our high school, we got 200 kids. I'm just going to round them up to 200. I know it's slightly higher than that. We get exactly 5,000, I believe it's $500 per student per year to deliver education to this student. Now the provincial school board in Ontario, where we are, they get per student $11,500.
Okay.
So there's a significant difference there.
So why do they do that?
When Brian Mulroney was the Prime Minister of Canada, he publicly stated that when he was the Prime Minister, this was some time ago, that the federal government is providing $13,000 per capita for every First Nation in Canada. And as far as he was concerned, that was more than enough to operate the First Nations. We did our calculations here in Wikwemikong, and our findings was the monies that arrive here in Wikwemikong isn't $13,000 per capita. It's about $4,000 per capita.
Oh, okay.
So there's $8,000 missing here someplace in the delivery. So who eats up that difference is the bureaucracy of Indian Affairs.
Special ed funding, we don't have adequate special ed funding. We have a number of students who need more resources, more programs. We don't have it. So.
Because of lack of funding and an increasing number of block funding agreements, little to no funding is given to special education students. The release of the First Nation Métis Inuit Education Policy, January 2007, has been a positive movement for funding issues. The government has invested $21.7 million in ongoing funding in Aboriginal education.
I believe that children on the reserve receive a strong identity with their education versus being off the reserve. I don't think that they would find their identity, because I believe it's like with language, it's a living, breathing.
Did you know Aboriginal students off reserve have lower education levels than Aboriginal